People have always been a little bit afraid of people who say they have psychic gifts. Think about it for a minute. What would it be like if someone in the room possessed deep, penetrative perception?
I see some energy around you.
Secrets would no longer be secrets. Private thoughts would no longer be private. Before you know it, your imagination runs wild, even if you don't believe. In the Middle Ages, hundreds of thousands of women were executed in the name of witchcraft. But hindsight tells us the witchcraft claim was just a cover story. Society really feared women's rising social and economic power. But the two concepts commingled, and they're still commingled today. Any mention of psychic function triggers an immediate shutdown in normal conversation.
She can't know what I'm thinking. She doesn't have that skill.
We almost have to tell ourselves it doesn't exist. Which is what I was doing in the hotel suite right now. I had just spent the last hour open-minded and listening to E.L. tell me about the onset of her psychic function, a lot of which came on after a catastrophic accident.
I wasn't expected to survive. The physicians told my family that it was a miracle that I lived. After that, I had really strong psychic abilities. I thought I already had really strong abilities, but I had no idea of what was to come afterwards. And it kind of came in waves.
And even though I believed her, she was like a character out of a movie. Her world was so unusual, it was hard to look at it as anything other than a fiction.
I would experience entities visiting me on a more frequent basis. Obviously, I had to go back to work, and work meant seeing patients, and work meant going back into the operating room. So I had to learn to put that to the side. And luckily, when you go through a residency training, they're really good at training you how to do that, how to compartmentalize things and put things to the side and just do your work. What I found was that when I went to go see the patients in the clinical setting especially, I was getting intuitive information about their lives. And it became more and more difficult for me to filter that.
And as I'm sitting there listening to her tell stories about going back to work while entities are visiting, I'm realizing that E.L. is totally the kind of woman I would want to be friends with. It's not just the subject matter of her life that fascinates me, although it does, at the same time that it sort of terrifies me, but it's kind of her whole approach to the subject matter. It's really comical. That's not to say that she doesn't stress out, because she does, but in general, her attitude is pretty light.
So this patient, she went from doctor to doctor. She was like deemed just a complainer, and everyone thought she just had heel pain. She came in with her son. And as soon as she sat down in the chair with her son, I got this vision of what their house looked like. And yes, as the son was explaining to me that his mother has pain in the heel and all this and that, I was listening to it, but my first response back to him was, "Do you have brown tile in your house?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Did you recently buy your mom a new bed?" And she kind of looked up like, uh-oh. and he said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, do you have cinder blocks next to the bed?" And he goes, "Yes." And I said, "Well, your mother hates the new bed. Every morning she stomps her heel on it and she goes, I hate this bed. Your mother doesn't have heel pain from plantar fasciitis. She has a calcaneal fracture." Got the x-ray and she had a fracture. I go get your mother some steps or buy her a new bed and remove those cinder blocks. And the mother said something to me in Spanish, and, she grabbed my hand and they gave me a kiss. And it was like, "Thank you so much," right? She was really happy because somebody finally told them that she hated the bed. She hated the bed.
If you recall from earlier episodes, this is the woman who channeled my dead grandmother right in front of me, which was emotional but ultimately very healing. And it led me to this moment right here, brainstorming experiments we could do together in the hotel lobby.
So,
All right, so what will we do for our view? I did not look up a cold case.
do you want to ask the manager of the hotel?
Oh, we could. Should we call him? Reminder, when I arrived, E.L. was in an elaborate argument with the hotel manager. They resolved it, but in an effort to soothe the situation, she offered him a reading. Is that going to mess up your future exchanges with the hotel?
I mean, no.
Okay.
But
We could do the hotel. I mean, that's kind of live and completely blind. Should we call him?
that would be me doing a reading, though, right?
I didn't want her to do a reading of the hotel manager. Any psychic can do a reading. And she wasn't just any psychic. Plus, I didn't want to send the hotel manager over the edge. We ran through a bunch of ideas, but we were stuck. A friend of mine in New York had agreed at first to collaborate with us, but at the last minute he got nervous.
That guy got creeped out, really?
Like,
You don't know I'm bubbly.
bubbly or not, her skills made people nervous. They made me nervous, and I trusted her. A funny thing happens when you're spending time with a psychic. You start thinking about what they're seeing, right then and there, about you. I wondered, was she seeing specifics? Like traces of that really embarrassing night in 1999? Or was it more like psychic people could see an aura or a glow, like the rest of us see shiny skin and healthy hair? The good and bad news is you can't really control what they see. Every psychic has their own system, their own filters, and there are tons of variables. Variables you'll never know about. So you have to trust that they have good boundaries. You have to be confident, and you have to be square with yourself. And mostly, you have to have a sense of adventure. You have to want to see what happens and be prepared for the fact that the experiment could fail.
So my tasking is to go to the event. And the event is TRN 222065, Go Games final location on February 24th, 2017 at 5:15 p.m. And Suzanne's right here with me, watching me go through useless piece of information.
So let me back up a minute. We didn't end up calling the hotel manager because E.L. had a good idea, a really good idea. We were going to find someone in the hotel lobby, some random person, to be our outbounder. An outbounder is a type of spy, someone who's sent out into the world to an undisclosed location while the psychic stays back at headquarters. Their job is to find the outbounder, observe their surrounding environment, and draw it in as much detail as possible. If you remember from episode 3, outbounders were used as operational tests in the Stargate program. Originally, the outbounder was the primary spy and the psychic was the secondary spy. On the surface, there was nothing dangerous or high risk about what we were about to do. Just find a willing stranger in a hotel lobby to see if they wanted to play our weird game. But a tiny part of me was worried about consequences. I started thinking about it more carefully. To an average person, working with a psychic maybe didn't sound so fun. Maybe it sounded like you were giving over some type of autonomy. In fact, that's exactly what happened post 9/11 when a more recent psychic team was working with the government.
We were working counterterror for the FBI. We worked with other people in government positions as well, intelligence. They wanted us to do work for them. And on the other hand, there was a covert group who was trying to shut us down, which was very schizophrenic.
That's John Vivanco, founder of a company called Right Hemispheric. He specializes in remote viewing training, media, and select services. But earlier in his career, while doing government contract work, he ran into trouble.
We were being harassed. We had death threats on us. We had a covert group vandalizing our homes, coming into our home. For instance, we'd be talking on the phone just as we are right now. The line would start to click, and a voice would come on and say, "Stop what you're doing or we'll kill you." And this happened a number of times. Yeah, it was a lot of pressure. We thought we would probably be killed eventually. And we were pretty happy to shut it all down. But then I started to get this push from somewhere deep inside, telling me to think about going back into it. It's a love of mine to be able to figure out mysteries and have fun with mysteries, whether I'm telling anybody about it or not.
And so there was the exact conflict I was having. How could we be sure that we wouldn't be freaking people out when asking them to participate? Would our intentions to have fun be enough to make the experiment fun for all parties involved? I was starting to have second thoughts about doing this, but E.L. was already out the door walking to the elevator. The doors open and the lobby is mobbed. It's Friday night. People are having drinks, first dates, pre-dinner rendezvous. We sit in the only two available seats. One is like a church pew, the other an over-designed stool. We're surrounding a small chess set. Next to E.L., in an uncomfortable-looking throne, is a suited young man on a laptop, nervous. And I can tell she's sort of looking at this guy like he's a candidate. He's not making eye contact with us. The room is loud, it's hard to hear anything. But I do hear E.L. say, sort of aloud to anyone, "I wouldn't ordinarily choose this seat." And to that, the suited guy next to her looks up and says, "It's because your back is to the majority of the lobby, right?" And they have a moment in which they both understand each other based on the idea of strategic placement, and she nodded to me. "So, are you interested in doing an experiment with us?" I ask. He blinks repeatedly and says he can't because he's waiting for some people. Then he looks up past me and says, "Oh, here they come now." And we all turn to see in walking a team of young men in orange jumpsuits. They look like skydivers or very handsome athletic exterminators. And on the back of their jumpsuits it says, "Go Game." Go Game, as it turns out, is this adventurous team-building group. They do corporate trainings, retreats, etc. The suited guy sitting next to us, I learn, is interviewing to join them. They're chatty and getting chattier, and they look to be making a plan. And I'm feeling like this group of people may be our only chance of finding a match for our experiment. So I take a chance and ask the team lead if he or his team would be interested. He listened with an almost distracting intensity. I tell him about bilocation, how a psychic person can leave their body and travel to another place on the map, anywhere if they're good enough. I have a psychic across the room, I say, and I point to E.L. as though a glimpse of her is going to assure him. And then I have this moment, one that I never saw coming. That I'm the person suddenly doing the convincing, as though I'm the one who knows firsthand that the psychic landscape is a real place. At what point had I claimed this authority? I couldn't remember. When I had gone from asking questions to actually convincing others to interrupt their day in order to sign on to my vision. And they did sign on to my vision. "Okay," he said, "let me see what I can figure out." Here's something else that was weird. Every time I start to explain bilocating to people, almost no one understands until after I explain it a few times. Mostly, I've determined that's because people can't believe it, or they don't want to believe it. But this guy and the whole Go Game team, they completely comprehended, almost like they knew what it was, or they were just willing to give it a try, to believe. A few moments later, one of the orange jumpsuited team members came over saying that he had permission to play, and he said he'd text me his location at 5:15. That was in an hour and a half. It was on. I was the tasker, E.L. was the viewer, and Wayne from Go Game was our outbounder. I made up a TRN, the target reference number. Okay, the TRN is 222065. And then I wrote out the task. So we'll be at the event, that is TRN 222065, which is Go Game's final location on February 24th, 2017 at 5:15 p.m. E.L. will go to the event that is the Go Game person's final destination, also known as the target, on 2/24/17 at 5:15 p.m. She'll provide the most useful information for me, the tasker. It's really important to write out the task in words on paper for a couple of reasons. One, it clarifies the intention for both the tasker and the viewer, so that we agree on the whole point to the experiment. And two, it clarifies the target so the viewer, when she bilocates, will be able to go exactly to the desired location. So now we'd written the task, the outbounder was headed towards the target, it was time to do the view. We head to the elevator, take it up to our floor, head down the hall to our suite, and realize we've lost the key. Neither of us quite remembers who had it last, and we're both looking through our bags. My bag isn't very big, and I quickly figure out that I don't have it. E.L.'s bag is huge, and she's dropped to the floor now, going through her bag item by item. Finally, she comes up with the Clift Hotel key, and we're both excited. She puts it into the door, and the light is still red. Neither of us really want to go back downstairs to talk to the hotel manager, so we're looking for someone close by. At the far end of the hall, I see a security guard disappear around the corner. So I chase him down and I explain to him that the key we have isn't working. And he looks at the key and says, "Well, that's an old key." And now he's very suspicious. It becomes a whole production to get us a new key. He radios downstairs, talks to the hotel manager, describes who we are, where we are. We finally get let in, we get our new keys, but 40 minutes have gone by, and I'm worried E.L. won't have time to do the view. Usually this type of experiment requires like 45 minutes, and even then, the viewer might not even get any information. Anyway, we get into the suite, and she gets her paper out and her pen. She starts walking around and needs to move in order to really start describing what she sees.
I need to go to the event. Go game final location, February 24th, 2017, at 5:15. What do they see at 5:15?
It's kind of funny. She has a few warm-up descriptions.
I feel like I'm in a dirty place. Almost feels like a dump or something like that. It's probably a really pretty place, and to me it's a dump. That's the other thing that has to come into this is for the viewer. When I receive the information...
It's not objective information.
Well, it is, but I'm kind of thinking that this is a place that I would look at and go, this is dirty, or this is... But I should get back to the target.
I think you're on the target.
So I need to start doing ideograms because that's how I get structures and things like that, and I'm not doing that yet. This place feels kind of dirty to me, though. I feel like they're at the bottom of something.
The time is running out, and in the end, she draws a picture, quickly. It looks like a view from a postcard.
I almost feel like there's water in front of me. This feels like it's like a cliff or an edge. You know, it feels like it's stone, like it's a wall, like it's gray, white. I feel like I need to do this arching arc. It feels like this. This feels like a bridge, path. It feels red and orange.
A bridge on the left, an island, a boat, water. She finishes at 5:10 with 5 minutes to spare. A text comes in from our guy, the outbounder. "Here's where I was," he wrote. And it's a photo from the San Francisco Pier. The Golden Gate Bridge is on the left. Alcatraz is in the middle. A red and orange boat is on the right. And of course, there's water everywhere. I'm remembering what she was saying about it felt dirty, like there was a dump. I text back, "Where are you exactly? Are you standing on the wall?" "I'm in Ghirardelli Square," he says, "in a steakhouse," and he names it. And I tell E.L., and she rolls her eyes and says, "I would never go there. I have a really bad association with that place." In other words, to her, it was a dump. We look at the picture that he sent, and we look at her drawing. I see a direct hit, and after thinking about it for a bit, she agrees. And here's how we know. If there was a bomb scare, her drawing would get a search team close enough to a location so they could clear the area and save some lives. So now it's 1 year later. I've gotten to know E.L. a lot better, and as we've become acquainted, we've sort of been able to do the impossible. Nurture a friendship. It isn't always easy for either of us. I'm constantly bombarded by uncertainty, my own and other people's, about whether or not this journey has been worth it, about whether E.L.'s truth will start to affect me in ways I can't manage. She, on the other hand, doesn't really have the luxury of living in the middle, of wondering if any of this is true. She's constantly bombarded by information about everyone and everything, past, present, and future. And every time I talk to her, I'm reminded that she probably isn't the only one who can do this, that there are thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people alive on the planet right now who see extraordinary phenomena in some way. I've wondered a lot about what it must feel like to have E.L.'s capabilities. I'm not sure I'd like it. I think it's easy to imagine enjoying the power without thinking of the burden. I get a lot of questions about where I stand on this project. Am I a believer, or an observer, or a reporter, or something more involved like a confidant? The truth is, my position has changed or expanded, because as you acquire information, the lines get very blurry. I definitely started out as a curious investigator, but as I was listening, I noticed a type of progression happening. Here's what I mean. If I were a straight reporter and listening to someone talk about seeing the future, I would have to say, despite their lived experience and body of evidence, that's not possible. The laws of physics don't permit time to flow backwards. And that would have been the end of episode 2. There wouldn't have been an episode 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. It would just be a big fat no, and then a little bit of speculation about why people believe their extraordinary experience. The same would be true for a story about after-death communication, or ADC. If I were a straight reporter listening to E.L. tell a story about the day she first saw an entity, I would nod politely and then judge her testimony against our current laws of the universe. How it's not possible to interact with a being after it's died. How consciousness doesn't live on. I would talk about cultural context, spiritual beliefs, and then I would say something like, "Aren't human beings fascinating?" In both of those scenarios, I would be judging, but not actually listening. Because when you listen, actively listen, you start to hear patterns in people's stories. You hear similar details, similar circumstances, and maybe more importantly, you hear similar hesitation. If the storyteller knows you're a skeptic, they'll amend the story. No one will tell you the story that's really in their heart. I started this project for people to have a safe space to tell these stories, and a place for people to listen. Because we all have a relationship with the extraordinary. And you can think what you want about it, that it's false or fraudulent or a sign of mental illness. You can even be a healthy skeptic about it and say it's a curiosity or it's an anomaly, and that it has nothing to do with your life. But at some point, we all get the opportunity to see the world in a different way. Maybe it will happen in a flash, in a dream. Or maybe it will happen in some unforeseen transition that changes your life forever. In either case, you'll have a choice. Do you block it out? Or do you open your mind to the possibility that maybe we're all extraordinary? Episode 6 will be the last episode for Season 1 of the Extraordinary Project podcast. Special thanks to John Vivanco, E.L., and everyone who contributed throughout the season. I'm so grateful. The Extraordinary Project was created by me, Suzanne Flores. I wrote this episode and produced it with David Weiner, who wrote the music and made the mix sound so nice.